These are some of the times when Chris literally caught weirdos getting their hands dirty. And this dude right here offered to set up an elaborate shopping spree just to woo the setup. But it's what he intended to buy for her that's gonna blow your mind. Yeah, I'm talking about Jeremy Todd West, who hatched a plan to meet the setup who was pretending to be someone who wasn't exactly his age. Now, we've all seen some really funky screen names before, but this guy's was just completely, brutally honest. He called himself Bandit 8077, and believe me, his filthy intentions were just as bad.
Calling himself Bandit 8077, he starts chatting online with a decoy.
Now, I'm not sure how many people he targeted before, but once he started chatting with the setup, he didn't waste any time in getting to the point.
Tells her, I would most likely want you to be my future wife.
What's more is that this guy was so hell-bent on getting things straight that in just about 20 minutes, he was ready to show up in person. Now, this wasn't a casual meet cute over a couple of drinks or games. This meeting was meant to serve a much more disgusting purpose. Only 2 days later, Jeremy came out with his real objective. Yep, with zero inhibitions whatsoever, he made what he wanted crystal clear. But obviously, the setup didn't give in so easily. She tried to get him to talk more by saying that she didn't even know him. But our man here had an answer already for that. Instead of addressing her concerns, he decided to double down. He actually asked her if she wanted to do it right there at the house or go somewhere else and do it. Yeah, no filter whatsoever. And it was so straightforward that it almost sounded rehearsed. Maybe he said it before, like a lot. But once he felt the hesitation in the setup's replies, he tried to swing a curveball nobody saw coming. Just 2 days before he met the chick, he got real paranoid.
But one thing that keeps running through my mind is if I get caught, I seen this Dateline thing where they are busting guys with cops trying to have sex with young kids.
He even shared the anxiety with the setup and spoke about how he watched a Dateline thing where they busted guys who were trying to use youngsters. Where have I heard something like that before? But did it deter him in any way? Absolutely not. He was more than happy to accept the setup's invitation for what would have been a fun night. And once inside, Jeremy got comfortable pretty fast.
Apparently, it doesn't scare him enough. Bandit 8077, a public works employee from Tennessee, makes himself at home.
But things got disturbing real quick. Yeah, dude just couldn't keep it in his pants any longer. But guess who decided to step in just in time?
Why don't you sit down before you give any hugs here, and we're gonna have a little chat.
Well, nobody can escape the way Chris pins you down with his glaring eyes. When Chris asked Jeremy what was going on, he replied that he had come over to hang out with the setup and be friends. But according to the chat logs, the actual plan was to take the chick out for a little shopping spree. But not for candy or chocolate, but to buy some underwear. Yeah. But that wasn't the end of it.
We would be kissing in my hands and caress your sexy body.
I made a mistake.
He went into further detail and expressed his wish to caress her desirable body. Trust me, this can't get any more disturbing. But guess what? Jeremy was aware that he'd walked himself into a trap and he already knew that he was in trouble. Once the cameras closed in on him, Jerry made a silent exit towards the door.
Sheriff's office, come on down, straight down, hands up. Get on your face right now, hands out.
And as per usual, the cops were ready waiting for their cue. Later during the interrogation, Jeremy stuck to a story that he was only going to meet her and be friends with the setup. Also, he didn't want the bust to go public, but the cops reassured him that it would. Because, well, yeah, of course it would. But this next guy went one step further to impress his mark. While most men bring gifts, this one decided to get rid of something instead. I'll let that idea simmer in your head for a bit. Riverside, California is known for its sweet and zesty oranges. But guess what else you'll find roaming in the streets of this city? Some seriously messed up men. And 40-year-old Daniel Polito has got to be the epitome of that.
I gotta finish brushing my teeth, okay?
Okay.
Just wait at the counter for a second.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Danny Boy chatted up with a setup man who went by the name Sammy, and Sammy made clear exactly how old she was. In spite of it though, Daniel practically threw himself at her. I mean, this guy was one for the most eager people to have ever been on the show, and you'll soon know why. But first, a little background. So Daniel had a chat with the PJ team, only to come to the Sting House and get caught. While chatting, Daniel didn't pull any punches when it came to what he expected from the setup. The man thought he had the riz and asked Sammy whether she wanted to watch him play with himself and a bunch of other, well, intimate questions. After arriving at the house, Daniel eagerly waited as the setup told him that she'd be out in a bit. However, to Daniel's surprise though, instead of the setup, someone else arrived instead.
How are you tonight? Why don't you have a seat right there, please?
Yep, it was Chris's time to make his move. Chris swiftly walked in from behind the closed curtains, and all Daniel did was this.
Nothing.
No,
Nothing or nothing good?
nothing good.
Nothing good.
Smile, yeah, I know. This sicko clearly knew he was busted, and despite that, he had the audacity to smile at Chris. I can't say what must have been running through his head at that point, but I can tell you that Daniel was as high as a kite. Anyway, without any hesitation, when Chris asked him the reason behind his visit, unlike other guys, Daniel didn't even beat around the bush while answering.
That on the internet.
The girl on the internet. And what is that girl's name?
When asked whether he thought what he was doing was right, guess what he said?
It's okay to come
No,
see
it's
you
not.
at 40.
It's not okay.
Well, I guess there's nothing we can do about this guy, is there? Despite being caught red-handed, he still had the audacity to say that none of it was right. So what the hell was he doing there in the first place? Obviously, it's clear that he was just trying to buy time while he cooked up an escape plan inside that dirty head of his. But when Chris kept pressing him to answer, Daniel pulled himself together just enough to cook up a really wild story.
But I was gonna tell her that there's a lot of people do that stuff like that. I wasn't gonna do anything to her.
Daniel first told Chris that he hadn't planned to do anything vile that day, but instead he came there only to lecture the naive and young woman on the dangers of the internet. But wait, the story doesn't end there. He then added something even more obscene. Yup, he said that a similar incident had occurred to one of his young cousins. Apparently, one of his cousins was violated by a man that she met on the internet, and Daniel was only there to prevent something like that from happening with Sammy. Now, at this point, I'm not entirely sure if this incident did happen. If it did, then Daniel should have learned something good from it, like he claimed he did. But instead, he decided to go down the same path. But Chris wasn't done listening. He then asked about this cousin's whereabouts, and this is when Daniel said something even crazier.
She's dead.
She's dead.
Yes.
He then went on about how it impacted him and what exactly had happened to that cousin of his. But what amazes me is that despite how brutal the story he narrated was, Daniel continued to stick up to his side of the story of being there to help the setup. I mean, this guy sure had some nerve to lie to Chris's face like that. Later, when Chris brought up the issue of him sending inappropriate pictures to the young girl, his answer was shocking. Since when did people start sending nasty pictures to teach people about online safety, huh? Doesn't make sense at all. Chris then monologued the entire transcript of the chats between Daniel and the setup, and well, that was something the demented guy wasn't exactly expecting. Because from that moment on, Daniel was at a loss for words.
Will it be okay if I go see you? The neighbors won't say anything to your mom.
When put on the spot, he finally blurted out saying that he had made a stupid mistake. But this mistake cost him 6 months in jail. I think it's safe to say it was a little bit more than stupid. Anyway, Daniel was definitely a pain. But this guy takes that concept to a whole new level. But before I go into more of what he did, why don't you share your support to my channel by dropping a like, subscribing, and turning on my post notification? Every little bit really helps the channel grow. With that out of the way, let's check what this 20-year-old is up to. So this dude here, Rob Klein, went by the screen name rklein05. A bit basic, but I'll take it. Now, I understand most of these guys have pretty revolting things to tell their victim, but this guy's chat was especially graphic. And what's more, Rob was an Army reservist, but it looks like he had left all of his discipline behind when he contacted the setup asking for some pretty inappropriate and intimate favors. He also shared his fantasies with the setup. Unfortunately for her sake and my sanity, he made sure to do so in excruciating detail.
So you want this old guy doing you in your house, on your bed, or wherever?
Fast forward to when Rob pulled into the driveway. He eventually walked towards the main door thinking he was about to get some action. And well, that's exactly what happened, but not in the way he expected. Once at the door, the setup invited him over and asked him to wait as she left to go get changed. Now, Rob initially grew suspicious because clearly there was something amiss.
Hey, you're early. I'm gonna go and get ready.
As soon as he entered the house, he couldn't see the setup, and yet he calmed down after she called out to him, saying that she'd be upstairs in the first bedroom. Wow, it looks like his ride was ready for him, and this made Rob flash a huge smile across his face. He then proceeded to walk towards the bar and wait for her to come back. But unfortunately for him, she wouldn't be coming back.
All right. Why don't you have a seat right there?
As I start to question him, he seems to get flustered.
As soon as he entered, Chris started bombarding Rob with questions. Rob looked beyond flustered. But wait, wasn't this the same guy who was so boldly chatting with the setup before? Well, he certainly didn't seem like a shrinking violet when he shared his desires with the setup back then. I mean,
So would you like to watch a movie with me with your hand down my pants? Or just no pants? We could just be naked all day.
what a ridiculous thing to say. But again, what's wrong with making new friends, right? This is always the first mistake these guys resort to when getting caught off guard. But thankfully, Chris immediately called him out for trying to exploit someone like the setup in the name of friendship. But to add more credibility to his lies, Rob then thought long and hard about it and finally came to a decision. Apparently, he didn't want to do anything with her at all. And for some strange reason, Chris just couldn't believe it.
And you decided that even after all this and all the explicit chat, you're not going to have sex with this girl.
Right.
Well, of course that was a lie. But there was no reason for Chris to trust him anyway. And I think Rob understood that loud and clear. In fact, this guy didn't waste a second convincing Chris he was innocent, because he knew no matter what he did, it wasn't going to end well for him. When Rob got up to leave the house, he shook hands with Chris as if it was some kind of business meeting. But he had no idea what was waiting for him outside.
Sheriff's office, put your hands up in the air now.
So what will these men have to say once they've been read their rights?
Once arrested, the cops transported him to HQ for further interrogation. During the interrogation, one of the officers had asked if he would find any, well, topical inappropriate content on his computer. And as you'd expect, Rob's answer wasn't exactly honest.
As far as I know, no, but
As far as he knows.
But as soon as he said that, Rob realized that he probably shouldn't be lying to the cops. He immediately corrected himself and said there was a picture in his system, but it got deleted the previous night. But Rob didn't stop with that. He then put all the blame on his brother and said he was the one responsible for saving the picture. This guy so readily threw his sibling under the bus. And I'm not saying the brother is innocent either, but this is one way to get pulled into an interrogation when in reality, you have nothing to do with it. In a matter of minutes, Rob had managed to contradict himself twice, and the investigator wasn't happy about it.
Let's cut to the crap.
But what was even stupider was the excuse that Rob used to tell Chris why he was present at the house.
I was actually just going to stop by here to let her know that I wasn't going to be here because I have to go meet with other people.
Wait a minute.
To sum it all up, according to Rob, he went through all the trouble for nothing. Yeah, some guys just don't get it. But this next guy was already a convicted felon. So what could be worse, right? Well, on a peaceful Saturday afternoon, there was this guy coming over to be a good Samaritan. And that's what 22-year-old Matthew Cogburn expected everyone to believe. The young man was all riled up when he realized that he'd have a chance to get with a hot blonde. But little did he know that the setup actually had a wig on the whole time. Well, of course, Matthew had no idea. As soon as he arrived at the house, he was asked to wait while the fake blonde put her laundry away. And just as Matthew was stretching and preparing himself for one wild night, this is what happened.
Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable for that?
I had a feeling this was going to happen.
You had a feeling what was going to happen?
You see, most of these guys are pretty sure that they'd run into trouble someday, and yet it's not enough to deter them from giving into these vile temptations. But Matthew was one notch higher. He not only recognized Chris, but also told him that he knew what the whole thing was all about.
Don't really do on 13 or NBC.
NBC?
Yeah.
You mean like Dateline NBC?
Yeah, suddenly he could barely find his voice. But guess what? This guy wanted to be super sure of everything. He even went the extra mile by making sure she had birth control and even offered to bring some skins as additional protection to boot. I mean, what more can you expect from someone who speaks like this?
You look at his MySpace page. His hero is God. His motto is Jesus rocks.
But as soon as the camera started coming out of the woodwork, the dude decided to bolt.
Well, you need to know that I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC.
The cops had to literally chase him down before he got away from them. From there on, things got really graphic as the cops took a deeper dive into this guy's dark side. But we all know he's not the first and won't be the last to harbor such vile intentions. So these were some of the weirdos who were caught in the act. And if you're looking to keep the discussion going, then make sure to check out my Discord server. And before you leave, don't forget to check my next post right here. It's even crazier.